Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to bring the House Judiciary Committee to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Chairman Briggs?
Here.
Representatives Carroll? Donahue?
Here.
Hanbidge?
Designation online.
Hohenstein?
Here.
Howard?
Here.
Kenyatta?
Designation.
Kincaid? Mays?
Designation.
Miller? Pielli? Rab? Sanchez? Schusterman? Chairman Kaufman?
Here.
Representatives Bonner? Borowitz? Ecker?
Designation.
Ham? Kale?
Designation.
Kerwin? Clunk? Kuzma?
Designation.
Ledbetter?
Here.
Rigby? Shalaba?
Having a quorum, we will move on to today's agenda. Before we begin, how about now?
You do it. Sorry. One second. Sorry. It's I didn't find it.
Test. Okay, cool. Just before we begin, I apologize for the little bit of miscommunication on the start of the meeting. Understand a few people came to the meeting room at the break, so I will do a better job in the future. We are going to first consider House Bill 36 by Representative Conklin. I'll need a motion and a second. A motion by Representative Rabb, second by Representative Donahue. Council, please provide a brief description of House Bill 36.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 36 authorizes enforcement officers employed by the Office of Inspector General to carry firearms in the performance of their official duties after completing firearms training. The bill takes effect immediately, and there are no amendments.
Thank you for that. Are there any comments on the bill? Representative Borowitz, you are in order on House Bill 36.
Thank you, Chairman. And I quote from the Office of State Inspector General's website. It says, our mission, it says, is committed to a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion for its workforce. And these ideals are at the very core of its mission and values to ensure ethics, accountability, and integrity in state government. So in the aspect of making the State Inspector General's office a full law enforcement branch like other law enforcement offices, I would say while you were refusing and they're refusing to hire for competence and merit, instead, they use DEI. Absolutely not. I'm grateful President Trump is getting rid of this stuff and this nonsense, and we should too. I will say I'm glad to hear that Democrats want American citizens armed so they can protect themselves. I don't think that these officers should lose that ability. You know, they should be able to arm themselves and have their Second Amendment right. I think Governor Wolf tried to take that away from them in years past, and no governor has the authority to take the Second Amendment right away from anyone, whether you're at work or not at work. So for now, I'll be a no. When they can get rid of DEI aspects, maybe they can come back and bring this bill back to me. Thank you.
We were bringing it up today. Is there any other comments or questions? Any other negative votes besides Representative Borowitz? If you don't mind, could I decline the roll call and just record Representative Borowitz in the negative and everyone else in the affirmative? We will refer this bill to the Speaker. Thank you very much, members. Second bill, I will need a second on House Bill 166. I will be making the motion, second by Representative Kaufman, introduced by Representative Bonner, 166. Council, please provide a brief description of the bill, and then we will allow Representative Bonner some comments.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 166 requires the Commonwealth to prove during the sentencing phase of a death penalty trial that the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt to impose a sentence of death. This bill takes effect in 60 days, and there are no amendments.
Thank you, Counsel. Representative Bonner, if you would like to provide some comments on House Bill 166.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I truly appreciate your bringing this bill to the committee at such an early stage. We did consider it last session, and I believe it may have passed unanimously through the committee last session, so I certainly appreciate the support. Just want to give you a little bit of background on the death penalty. This is a very controversial public policy issue, and I know there are strong feelings on all sides of this issue, and I certainly respect that. A little bit of background on the death penalty, because I know we may be visiting this issue again in the future. In 1972, the United States Supreme Court declared death penalty statutes across America to be unconstitutional. And they did so based on the Fifth Amendment. And their reasoning was that jurors were not given any guidance as to when they should impose the death penalty. And as a result, juries arbitrarily decided who would receive the death penalty. And tragically, we found that all white juries in particular were imposing the death penalty on minority groups at a much higher rate than justifiable under the law. And it was a great concern to the United States Supreme Court and obviously to many others across this nation. The consequence then of not providing jurors with specific instructions as to when they should impose the death penalty resulted in being declared unconstitutional because there was no due process there. People accused of capital crimes were not given any information as to why the jury would impose it in one case but not in another case. Therefore, in the 1970s, state legislatures across the nation had to grapple with the adoption of new death penalty statutes. Most of the death penalty cases in America are tried in the state system, not in the federal system. So all the more so, we need to be very careful when we adopt death penalty statutes and make certain that it is fair to all people involved. The victims, the defendant, the accused, and to society. And as a result of that decision in 1972, the states across the country developed a two-phase system in deciding whether the death penalty should be imposed. In the first phase, the jury determines the guilt or, the lack of a better phraseology, the non-guilt of a particular individual as to whether they have committed murder in the first degree. And that requires a specific intent to kill. In this phase, the jury is instructed that the government has the burden to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that the defendant committed the crime of murder in the first degree. If the jury returns a verdict of murder in the first degree, the prosecutor has the option, not the requirement, but the option to proceed with a second phase, and that's the death penalty phase. But before the prosecutor can proceed with the second phase, there now must be one of 18 aggravating factors present before the death penalty can even be sought. So if we have a fairly standard murder case where someone pulls out a gun and kills someone, that is not a death penalty case. You still have to have additional aggravating factors before the death penalty can be sought by the government. Some of those aggravating circumstances could be a killing for hire. It could be the killing of a hostage. It could be the killing of a witness. It could be the killing of a child under the age of 12 years. Again, there are 18 such factors. One of those must be met, just one, before the death penalty has some potential application. In addition, in this second phase, the defendant has the right to produce mitigating evidence, such as they suffer from a learning disability, they did not fully appreciate the act because of they're under the influence of alcohol or drugs. A defense is not available as to the actual substantive charge, but it is considered as part of the death penalty phase. So If the defendant can produce evidence of good character, that is considered as well. So there are a number of factors that the defendant will also provide to the jury in this process of determining whether the death penalty will be imposed or not. However, in this particular phase, the government only has the burden to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances. So they're asking the jury that you can take this person's life if you find that the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances by a mere shifting of the scales of justice ever so slightly, because that's the phraseology that is used in front of a jury. A preponderance of the evidence, the slightest shift ever with the evidence causes you to meet your burden of proof. And I believe that such a burden of proof, such a minimal burden of proof on the government is not appropriate as we decide the fate of another individual's life. So I come to you today to request your support of a bill that will place the same burden of proof on the government that the jury heard when it was deciding the guilt or non-guilt of a particular individual, and also then deciding subsequently whether this person should receive the death penalty. In trying these cases, it's a puzzle to me what the jurors must be thinking, because they're told in the phase one as to whether the person committed the crime or not, you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And yet now we get to one of the most important phases of this trial, and they're now told if it's just a mere preponderance of the evidence, you can take this person's life. To me, this particular change is a human rights issue and one that is long overdue. And I would ask your support for this particular legislation to try and bring some fairness in the system as the government seeks to take the life of another human being. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bonner, for your very compelling and long description of the bill, but thank you for that. You always bring a great insight. Any other comments, Representative Hohenstein, on House Bill 166?
Thank you, Chair. I will note that brevity is not something that our profession is known for. So, Representative Bonner, I just want to say thank you for your continued advocacy for this bill. I think it reflects a better balancing of the very weighty considerations that we make as a society when we have someone's life in our hands. I personally have opposition to the death penalty for reasons of my faith and morals, but I also recognize that as a legislator, I don't have any right to impose those morals onto someone else, but rather to be able to try to find that proper balancing. And what you described as the process for a jury to consider both guilt or non-guilt, and then to consider whether or not to put someone to death, I think is a good description of exactly how heavily that decision should weigh and be weighed by the people who make it. And I very much appreciate your approach to this, and I'll be voting yes.
Thank you, Representative Hohenstein. Any other comments or questions on the bill, Representative Rabb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Representative Bonner, for this bill. I fully support it. And I really appreciate the context that you provided behind your impetus for putting this forth, providing some historical context. You had mentioned about all white jurors often coming up with the death penalty for overwhelmingly black men. That's a diversity issue. You talked about making the process more fair. That's an equity issue. And your legislation has inclusive language that allows our state to do better. Because if our governor changes his mind and removes the moratorium on the death penalty, this would apply if this is enacted into law, and it should be. And we don't know what other future governors may choose to do with regard to continuing the current moratorium on the death penalty. So I'm very much appreciative of your expertise and your care in crafting this legislation. It is indeed something I think should garner bipartisan support.
Thank you very much, Representative Rabb. Any other comments or questions before we go to a vote? Are there any negative votes on House Bill 166? Are there any other negative votes besides Representative Borowitz? If it's okay with my counterpart, would it be okay if we record everyone in the affirmative and Representative Borowitz in the negative? Secretary, if you could make that record and refer it to the Speaker. Thank you, members. We will be sending this to the Speaker. The final vote on our agenda is House Bill 378 by Representative Hanbidge, who's joining us online. We will need a motion by Representative Schusterman, seconded by Representative Kincaid. Council, please provide a brief description of House Bill 378.
House Bill 378 streamlines the child custody determination factors. The bill decreases the number of factors from 16 to 12 while still incorporating all of the current factors. The bill continues the current best interest and safety of the child standard. Bill takes effect in 60 days and there are no amendments.
Thank you, Council. I believe I am going to speak briefly on the bill. Representative Hanbidge is listening in, but I'm just going to provide a little bit of history on 378 regarding the work we did and are doing to streamline the custody factors. If many of you recall, Representative Schusterman and Representative Hanbidge had a hearing on this bill. The hearing was needed because last session we passed a law that became known as Caden's Law. And House Bill 378 then needed a little bit of tweaking following the passage of Caden's Law. We had the hearing. It was towards the end of session. We were trying our best to try to get something out of our committee to the Senate. It got, amendments were needed, some language needed to be finessed. So what we decided to do, the session ran out. Representative Hanbidge reconvened those conversations with the Bar Association, with other practitioners to come up with a bill that we believe the Senate is also in agreement to. So right now we have a bill that is well worked through, will make these custody dealings much more clarified and hopefully much easier to deal with. So it's a good bill. It's a strong bill supported by folks that we usually listen to. Are there any questions or comments on the bill in addition to that? Seeing none, are there any negative votes on House Bill 378? Wow. This is second week. Last week we had a unanimous vote. So well, I'm sure it won't be the only bills, but we will be referring this to the Speaker in a unanimous way. Thank you, members. Before we adjourn, I have some difficult news. It's exciting news for one individual. Sad news for many of us. Our executive director on the Democratic side, who's been with the caucus for 10 years, is retiring. Thursday is his final day on the job. And I just wanted to thank you, Tim. Many of you know Tim better than others. Tim had a full career at the Public Defender's Office in Cumberland County, 25 years in the Public Defender's Office. Those are hard years. 5 of those years, I think, was a chief public defender. He joined our caucus 10 years ago, 2015, and had brought, he was on the public defender board, he was on the criminal defense lawyers board, Many of you probably can't wait the bi-weekly publication of the Pennsylvania Bar Journal. He writes a very regular column regarding appellate decisions. So he brought all that real-world experience to us. He helped me be a better committee member before I was the chair. He helped me be, I hope, a good chair. He taught me a lot about the law and about balance and about pragmatism. And I will really miss you as a counsel, but also as a friend. And I just want to thank you for your service. He doesn't like a lot. We probably won't do this on the floor. But he and Pat are going to enjoy their retirement. I'm trying to talk him into running against one of your members, but he is. I think he is done, right? So looking forward to getting angry emails from Tim when we don't do a good enough job to warrant his praise. But he's always been a great staffer, a great legal mind, and the caucus, and I think the General Assembly will really miss. I started getting, this is where it gets I started getting emails from folks in December hearing that I was retiring. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like lobbyists and people in the building. I was like, I'm not retiring. I got 4 kids. I'm not going anywhere. So then I realized it was leaking, but then it never went any further. So the duo of the Tims is breaking up, but thank you, Tim, for your service. With that, we will probably, Chairman Kaufman and I will discuss, we will probably have a meeting during the budget hearing breaks. We're still evaluating bills. We're trying to come up with something that would be a worthwhile agenda, but we won't have another meeting this week. You never know. You never know with the Judiciary Committee. But the plan is not, and we will keep everyone apprised. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.